Welcome to Global Risk Community Chat. Today our guest is Joris Krijger. I'm very happy to have you here today, Joris. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, of course. So before we get into the topic, can you briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, sure. My name is Joris Krijger, as you said. I work as an ethics and AI officer at a Dutch bank, the Volksbank. And in addition to my position at the Dutch bank, I also do a PhD at the Erasmus University Rotterdam, where I also look at ethics and artificial intelligence. So I get a bit of the practical insights and a bit of the theoretical and academic insights, and I try to combine those insights in both my positions.
Yeah, sounds super fun and a lot of diversity on that. And I imagine with the academic side and also the more on the in-job position as well. So with that being said, let's then jump into the topic. What would you like to share with us today?
Well, I want to discuss the relevance of ethics for risk management, but also the relevance of AI ethics and the way AI ethics relates to risk management in finance. That's something I'm working on at the bank, and that's something I'm researching from an academic perspective. And I think both disciplines, risk management and AI ethics, can learn a lot from each other. And that's something I would like to discuss here today.
Cool. So what are some key things when it comes to AI and ethics and how they are relevant to, risk? Would you give me some, pointers on that?
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure to what extent everyone is familiar with the relevance of ethics for artificial intelligence or the ethical risks artificial intelligence can impose on organizations. But I think it is a very important starting point. We've seen some incidents in the past where AI didn't behave as expected, where actually the use of AI was called irresponsible. And what I've noticed throughout my PhD research, but also just being active in finance, in the field, working at the bank, is that a lot of the approaches to ethical artificial intelligence are focusing on technical design. So how can we design a model that is fair, that is accurate, that performs well, that does not discriminate, that is explainable, that respects privacy. But I think what is equally important, if not more important, is the organizational design. So how do we design an organization that is capable of signaling or identifying these sorts of ethical risks with the models it's developing and deploying, and managing and adequately managing these risks and taking mitigating measures to mitigate the ethical risks that come with the use of artificial intelligence. And I think that is increasingly more important. And I think organizations need to be increasingly more aware and do increasingly more in their system structures and processes to become aware of these sorts of ethical risks.
Yeah. And how can they become more aware? What can they do, or what can they start with on that note?
That is a very good question. And what I've learned so far is that, especially in finance, which is a heavily regulated industry, at least in Europe, that these ethical aspects don't tend to get addressed anywhere in the organization in particular. So financial organizations need to have this model governance, model validations teams, of course, these privacy teams, privacy offices, compliance office. But the ethical aspects of bias or non-discrimination, of explainability or accountability, they tend to fall between the cracks of these sorts of departments within an organization. And so the first step is really asking yourself the question, are we sufficiently addressing these questions, the fairness of our models, the explainability of our models? And if so, where are they being addressed? Where are the models being evaluated? What do we take into account when we evaluate a model? Because mainly the model validation or model governance teams look at discriminatory power, predictive power, more, the mathematical part. Are they performing as they should perform? But I don't look at the societal implications. And so that requires a new way of evaluating and looking at the impact you're having as an organization and the decisions you make throughout the life cycle of an AI system that you're taking into production. So that's a new way of questioning, and that starts with the question, are we asking the right questions? And if so, what questions do we need to ask to adequately address these ethical aspects.
Yeah, that actually sounds quite like also relevant to on the risk end, I think, because especially with the pandemic, we have noticed a lot of arisal of different kind of risks as well, and AI or use of certain technologies was a part of it too, which I think brought up many other aspects to how people or the businesses should be operating. And I think on that end, it is not only a shift in the AI or ethics side, but also on the risk side as well, just asking questions in a different way, having a different, maybe an outlook in some aspect on that note. So with that being said, I want to move on to the next question, and that is, if you were to give some takeaway points to our viewers, and if they would start with implementing something, what would that be? What should they start with?
Yeah, as said, for me, I think the main point I want to emphasize is that ethics is not something that should be delegated to data scientists only or model developers only. It's an organizational responsibility to have these ethical safeguards in place. And in order to do so, in order to adequately or to put them in place in a manner that actually makes sense and in a meaningful way, that's the word I was looking for, requires some changes in your processes and in your structures. It shouldn't just be it shouldn't be a one-time assessment of a system and say, look, we tick all the boxes for ethics. Ethics is an ongoing discussion, and ethical dilemmas can arise in every step of model development. And you should be able to justify the decisions you make in every step of development, but also in deployment and in monitoring of models. So if there's one thing I want to get across here, it is that organizations should really start looking at their models in a different way. We know risk management for models. There's a great framework on that. And we also have these compliance and ethical codes of conduct, these sorts of ethics related matters. But I think it is now time to start looking at the societal impact of the models we are using, and to start asking the questions whether we made the right decisions and whether we can justify, and I mean morally justify, the decisions we took throughout the development and deployment process. And if not, if we come out short, then I think we should ask ourselves, what should we do to make the model more fair, for example, to make it more explainable, to be able to provide an explanation to customers, to every stakeholder, basically, that requires some sort of information and or is affected to some extent by the use of the model.
Yeah, sounds quite good. I think it also summarizes everything you have also mentioned super well. So with that being said, I have one very short question, or my last question, and that is, how it is for you to be part of risk community? Because I know, of course, you're part of now ethics and AI as well as risk or finance. So how it is for you, your observations?
Yeah, for me, it's always interesting because it sounds a bit sad, but I don't belong to any of these communities fully, in the sense that I'm always in a bit of a hybrid between academia and practice, between risk and ethics, or risk and compliance within the bank. So for me, it's always great to meet people who are from a different background than I am, and to have these sorts of conversations, to learn from each other, because as I mentioned in the beginning, I think we can learn a lot from each other as AI ethics community and as risk community. So I think it's great to have these communities and these opportunities for interaction and dialogue, because that's where I think progress happens.
Yeah, that sounds super nice. And I think, like when you're not part of one community or like multiple communities, it gives a very broad and nice understanding of many different topics as well. So with that being said, I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I think it was super interesting topic. I wish we had more time, but yeah, thank you so much, Joris.
Thanks. I enjoyed the conversation.
Have a great day.